Hello, everyone. Welcome to episode 2 of the campaign log. We actually played in this last session, although that was nearly a week ago because the next session is tomorrow. I was having some issues with the recording, but theoretically, I've got it working. So, we did have some player mix-up, as well as people finishing their characters. So obviously the alchemist and the gunslinger, who had already created their characters during the one shot several months ago, they're fine. I fixed up any parts of their character sheets that need to change. The war priest is finished. Playing a dragonborn, we do have to go through some of their alternate racial traits because they did pick some, but I don't remember which ones. And then our new player, because the player playing the sorcerer has scheduling issue come up, so he was no longer able to stay in the campaign. The new player is playing a monk, specifically multi-classing one level of Urban Blood Rager, and then Unchained Monk from that point forward. I have gotten his Flurry of Blows working. So if we go Flurry full attack, it'll make all three of the attacks it's supposed to. The second attack is at -5 for high base attack bonus. The Flurry is at its normal bonus. It's all working as it should. The thing that was stopping it from working in the first place is that it did not have an associated class assigned to the item or the attack. I'm not sure if you can assign it to the item, but it's all working now. The monk still has several feats missing. I believe most of it is regular bi-level feats, because improved unarmed strike and stunning fist are given for free as a monk. Dodge is a monk bonus feat. So he should have, let's see, and then his human bonus feat, the major drawback feat are two of the luck feats, and the other one is a level feat. So it looks like he's got one monk bonus feat that he needs and two regular feats. And I think several members of the party actually have animal animosity as their major drawback. So animals do not like the party, especially these two, the war priest and the monk. So the first thing we did for the session, so before session, because we had a new player who was not here for session 0, I showed up in Discord a couple hours early, told the new player that I was going to be doing that. They popped in, we made his character. They have not played Pathfinder in a while and been playing 5th edition for some time, since the last time they played Pathfinder. So they knew enough, to do the multi-class, that they knew they wanted to do the multi-class. But actually building the character and getting all the feats and using Elephant in the Room, it was new to them, and Foundry was definitely new to them. So I filled out most of the Foundry stuff. Most of the inventory was filled out by me from what he said he wanted. His levels were filled out by me, all that stuff. And he decided to roll for stats as well. And he asked if he could use a hero point to re-roll an ability score, and he did. And overall, he ended up with 32 point by equivalent. He re-rolled like an 8 and got a 13. It wasn't that big of an improvement. But the War Priest was also in Discord early to finish up his character. He also decided to re-roll an ability score with a hero point. So his total point by equivalent is now up to 51 from rolling for stats, because he re-rolled a 9, I believe, and got a 17. Yeah. And of course, that didn't stop him from being the first person to almost die. So the first thing we did, because I wanted to, kind of get rolling, I was excited. I had prepped this stuff like weeks in advance. I wanted to play, and I also hadn't had D&D in the games where I'm a player the previous weekend. So I was ready to go, and then somebody asked, like 3 people said, "Hey, shouldn't we like introduce our characters first?" And I was like, "Oh yeah, sure, go ahead. Yeah, you're right. We should do that." And then the only person that actually like gave more of an answer other than like name, race, and like 4 words to describe their backstory was the one person who didn't ask to introduce characters. The other ones like were awkward about it. They didn't really want to do it after asking to do it. They were just expecting it to be mandatory. So even though it wasn't very pleasant for them, they asked to do it anyways because they're used to it. And then I asked them if they want to take because the first dungeon, they have to go, defeat some cultists, preferably capture the leader alive for an increased amount of reward. They're somewhere around here on the old road because it's still in use because a lot of people, traveling merchants and such, don't want to pay the train fees since it's basically equivalent to their income. The train is expensive for merchants. For adventurers, it's a bit pricey, but it's not gonna break the bank. It's like 10, 20 gold depending on how far you're going. But yeah, so they decided to take the train to Stridehaven because it's basically along the road, and they were able to reduce a day to an hour of travel. And of course, a day of travel, when I was looking up the rules, is 8 hours, not like 16 or 12 or something. It's 8, and only 8 apparently. Adventurers don't like to travel very long. They don't like to utilize their entire day. So they decided to take the train most of the way there. So they only had to roll 1 random encounter. They rolled a hostile random encounter of the normal difficulty variety. And if we head over to the forest random encounter page, I have already cleared the page. But what they fought, they rolled animal as the creature type. I don't actually need to drag these on the page. I can just open them. They had 2 saber-toothed tigers to deal with. And because the saber-toothed tigers have such... Well, a plus 13 isn't a low to hit bonus, but when, the monk has an AC of 38 and the war priest has an AC of 29, and it's just, normal natural weapons against full AC, they only hit like once or twice between 2 saber-toothed tigers. Yeah. Not, it wasn't a very dramatic battle. I'm going to have to get some higher level enemies in here because these guys built pretty optimally. Anyways, they then found, all the destroyed wagons and fight areas from where the cultists were kidnapping people and stealing all their stuff. And were very easily able to meet the, like, DC 10 or 15 or whatever it was survival check to track them down. So they got to the dungeon, which, if I go over to the walls, the players cannot see outside. So while this map looks desert themed and they don't know that because they started here. And it's like, oh, Yellowstone, and none of them are geologists. They don't know that it shouldn't be a yellow color of sandstone in this area. So they make their way in. Now, this here, the Symbol of Pain, that's a symbol spell. If I pop open the cult leader, go over to spells, Symbol of Pain. So symbol spells are pretty mean. So they last for 1 hour. If you fail your save and the effects happen to you, the effects persist for 1 hour after you get further than 60 feet from the symbol. And I believe that timer resets if you get within 60 feet again. Additionally, the Symbol of Pain is projecting this aura of pain for 10 minutes per caster level after it's activated. And because it's a necromancy effect and the cult leader has a bonus to cast all to necromancy, that's 100 minutes. So like an hour and 40 minutes that they're gonna be dealing with this thing, and they've only been in the dungeon in game time like at most 10-20 minutes. They haven't been making that many skill checks. They've been moving fairly fast. They've only done a bit of the dungeon, like 2 combat encounters. Additionally, magic traps such as symbol spells are hard to detect and disable. Only a rogue with the ability to find and disable magical traps can use perception and disable device to disable it. And the DC is 25 plus the level spell, which for a 5th level symbol spell is 30. Now, the War Priest took a trait that makes them count as a rogue for the purposes of magical traps. Thing is, they, to keep things moving and to avoid metagaming and all that, they just did passive perception. It's a great rule from 5th edition. Why not use it? They have plus 16 perception, so that's a passive of 26. Not enough for normal traps, but a 5th level symbol spell, no. So they set it off. The only person to fail their save was the alchemist. And Symbol of Pain, the effects are fairly mean as well. -4 to attack rolls, ability checks, and skills, which for an alchemist is pretty bad. Luckily, it hasn't seemed to hamper him too much because one trick to, if you're a lazy game master, is to give enemies low AC. 20 isn't that low, but these are 6th level characters that they're playing. Because hitting is fun, and if you can just kind of lower the AC a bit, increase the hit points, you'll have the same difficulty at battle, but the players will feel more success throughout the battle, and you won't have to put as much effort into actually making the overall gameplay as fun to hit like the minimum requirement of, we would like to spend 4 hours over time every week playing your game. Now, of course, I do try to go for maximum fun, but the low AC still helps. It doesn't matter how great your game is. If the players are hitting 80% of the time instead of 60% of the time, they're gonna feel more success. Of course, if they hit 100% of the time, it doesn't feel very real. Unless, that one player just has a really high hit bonus, and then it's like, okay, they're twice as good as the other players. Of course, they're gonna hit all the time. But I'm not too worried about AC. I got other ways to make enemies difficult. Like in this room. So the first thing the players did after setting off the symbol cell, they saw this door. The doors here are not locked; they are barricaded. But there isn't, a button in, I don't think, any tabletop game or virtual tabletop rather for a barricaded door. You just use the locked one, and it's barricaded from the player's side. Now, the reason for this is that when the cultists came in this place, they were like, oh, there's undead back there? We don't need the entire dungeon. We'll just barricade a couple doors around the place and not have to deal with the undead. And of course, the players thought, there's a trap in that pile of stuff. If we set it off, if we start, unpiling the stuff barricading the door, we're going to set off, some kind of trap, whether it's a fireball or just a boulder falling out of the ceiling, whatever. I think they even made a perception check and it's like, no, you don't see any traps. They still just left it alone. And I think they still assume it's trapped, but I'm not sure. They came up here to the broken statue. I explained that, the cultists didn't break this. This thing has been broken for quite a while. At some point, a piece of the ceiling fell out. Probably some minor earthquake. You know how plate tectonics are. The pillar broke. Something hit the top of the statue. It fell over, broke into a couple pieces. Now, the only person with a rank in knowledge religion is the monk. The war priest did not put a rank in knowledge religion. And in Pathfinder, there are some skills you need to be trained in to make checks with that skill, unless you have an ability that says otherwise. And those skills are the ones you see here that have the requires training checked off. And all knowledge skills require training. And the monk did not decide to make a check, so they did not learn who this is, who this statue is of. It is of Lunaris, who is the goddess of the moon, wolves, and the sea. Not to be confused with the goddess of water. She is a chaotic good god, so this temple isn't, outright evil. But something Lunaris is also sometimes referred to, and this isn't in the Google Doc with all the gods in it that I have as a player handout for, clerics, war priests, and anyone else that feels like having their character worship God. She's also sometimes, less often and less known, referred to as the goddess of lycanthropy, mostly werewolves. Which is why, if the players do decide to go into the barricade parts of the dungeon, because there is extra loot back there, as you can see from the chests, not only are they facing these primitive zombies, which, they're not difficult, they're gonna hit, they're probably gonna kill them in one full attack. And they only have +6 to hit, they're not really gonna do much. Their weapons are made from flint napping obsidian into spearheads. But each of the chests also has an ancient werewolf zombie, which has quite a few more hit points. Not great AC, and I am going to have to increase their to hit bonus before session tomorrow, because I want them to actually be challenging, so that way the players have to earn the loot that is in these chests. But continuing on with what they did, or no, I suppose I should finish up the lore. So these werewolf zombies were, in life, they were priests of Lunaris, in a very primitive civilization. They were gifted with lycanthropy, which, when it's gifted and not a curse or a disease, they control when they're not in wolf form. Now, that civilization was wiped out by some plague because, primitive, even as priests, they weren't very good at fighting it. So this temple was converted into a tomb, and new rooms were dug. And at some point, they became undead. Now, what caused them to become undead? It's not really that important. Likely, it was something to do with the plane of shadow and some negative energy just popping in to say hello and create some natural undead. And of course, the priests of some dedicated lycanthropic priests of Lunaris would gladly be in werewolf form when they died. So they have now become werewolf zombies. And I believe they can actually inflict lycanthropy as a disease, too. Yes, here we go. It's in there by attack. It's a DC 15. Fortitude, and it's a magical disease. So the monk will be immune. Speaking of the monk being immune to diseases, when they defeated the saber-toothed tigers, the monk just decided to take one of the hearts out and just start eating it as a snack along the road. And I was like, I think they would count as red meat. So it's probably unlikely they have, salmonella in them for raw meat things. And he was like, I'm a monk, I'm immune to disease. And I was like, oh yeah, so we don't even have to worry about it. I can stop thinking now. So continuing on with what the players did, they went over here along this path, and they ended up going north after making a perception check and hearing chanting. Because cultists, including the cult leader who was there was another regular cultist there, and they were performing a ritual, which the players did not identify the ritual, but they assumed, rightly, but probably for the wrong reasons, that it was a summoning spell. Because despite several of the players taking a ritual casting feat, they seem to not read through the entire rules for it, because, it could be any spell that they're trying to mimic here. So the monk goes in, the cultists, do not stop their ritual. They say, like, the cult leader is like, hey, if you interrupt us, this thing is probably going to explode, and you're standing right next to it. And the monk is like, I don't care. But, you know, he was out of actions. I think it took him a double move, or maybe he. No, he did like a wand or something to activate mage armor or shield or something. So he wasn't able to attack that turn. So the gunslinger was back here, which was, you know, like half. It was like a pixel away from being within line of effect from the center of the ritual. So he didn't get hit with the damage from the explosion, but he shot one of the cultists. They failed their concentration check by a mile because they're 4th level clerics, and he did quite a bit of damage. Their concentration check is not very high. So the ritual, I had him roll a d8 to see what the bad effects of the ritual were. It landed on disintegration explosion. So, big explosion. The monk was the only player in the radius of the explosion, or, well, the only player in line of effect. Monks have evasion, and he succeeded the DC because it would have been equal to the DC of the spell. And it's a good thing they did not roll a 1 on the d8, because that would have, like, unless the monk succeeded, I think it's a will save for plane shift effects, he would have been shifted to another plane with the cultists. And not only would they have lost a significant amount of the bounty, the monk would also possibly be on another plane. And I believe will saves are actually a bit of a weakness in this party overall. Not the war priest, but the alchemist only has a +5 compared to his, which is, you know, about half the average of the other two saves. The gunslinger, I think, has a similar issue, despite, I think, don't gunslingers go off of, yeah, he's keyed off of wisdom as a gunslinger, and his will save is still fairly low compared to his other saves. You know, +8's not bad, but compared to, it's his lowest save by 3. And then even the monk, who's also keyed off, oh no, that's not even his lowest save. Why are his saves so low? He's a monk with really high ability scores. Yeah, the cult leader wasn't really able to get off too many spells. It looks like, yeah, I tried to use blindness, deafness, and it didn't work. And that's it. The thing is, they did capture the cult leader alive at exactly the amount of non-lethal needed to knock her out. So I have to look up the rules for recovering from non-lethal before the session, because if it only takes like 10 minutes to heal 1 point non-lethal, then that cult leader is going to wake up and probably ambush them when they walk into this next encounter with flanking, and, you know, start throwing the higher level spells at the backline players. Once the players defeated the cult leader, the local cult leader, they got a letter that had been sent to her recently. It was in a basic Caesar cipher. One of the players figured it out pretty quick, and the letter reads as follows: the preparation within the coven is going smoothly, and the coup will be complete by the time you see this. My kind will no longer idle. That is coming directly from the person who wrote the letter, who is written down Father Octo. The way I set up the cult titles for this cult is Father is like Mother. Father is pretty much the second highest ranking below the high priest of the cult. Additionally, the name of Octo got the players kind of argued about, what does that mean? Does that mean that there's going to be 7 other bosses before we have to fight this guy and he's going to be the final boss? Or and then one of the other players kept insisting, no, he's an octopus, which I found quite funny, that they had, you know, one of them went the kind of Roman, half, like several children are just named after what order they were born in, and then the other one just kept saying, no, he's gonna be an octopus, which would be hilarious. So I think the players thought this line, based on the reactions, I thought they think it's like the coven is going to stage a coup within one of the noble houses, but that's not the case. This guy is just taking over his coven that he's in. The next 3 lines are about other leaders within the cult. The Ronin is nearly complete training of the new generation of disciples within his sect. The Knight has successfully infected Rustyard, which is a small town in the south of the barony that is branched as a coal mine to refuel the trains, that has some rusting away old train cars there. And the High Priest grows his tower, which is the first reference to the name of the campaign, the Growing Tower, because there's a tower that belongs to this High Priest, and is eventually they're going to learn as it starts poking out over the trees of the forest that, hey, it's getting bigger. And of course, instructions for the cult leader they found here, that they are to continue the rituals, keep gathering their own resources from the road, aka keep murdering and stealing, and keep your men happy. We don't need any more defectors. Now, that line about the defectors, it is kind of just me setting myself up for tools to work with in the future, because the players might want to look for some of these defectors to find information. It could be nothing. Maybe they have captured and killed all the attempted defectors, or maybe it'll come up as a major plot point where there's like one future defector that gets away and basically goes to the church for help and stopping the cult, and the players will get that. It could be foreshadowing, it might not be. When you're foreshadowing, one of the big tricks to foreshadowing, especially if you don't know exactly what the story is going to happen, like when you're running a tabletop RPG, is just make details like this, and maybe they come up later, maybe they don't. If they don't, the players aren't gonna really remember it. If they do come up later, they're gonna be impressed that you were able to foreshadow like that. But yeah, they haven't really figured out anything to do with this letter other than just return it to the church once they're done out here. Either way, when the ritual exploded, it woke up the guys in here, who, since the cultists are taking turns sleeping anyways and sleeping shifts, and only 3 out of 12 are sleeping at a time, they each had 4 bedrolls in use, like 3 just stacked on the ground for extra cushion and comfort, and then 1 that they were actually in. If it's like a sleeping bag, I'm not really sure what bedrolls look like. Either way, much more comfortable than your standard camping experience. And there was and the ones in this room had also been alerted. So the sleeping guys came to this room. There's like 1 here, 1 here, and they were in like a checkerboard pattern in the 4 spots in this corner. So when the war priest got in, readied actions started going. They hit him with Bone Shaker, which not only does some damage if they fail their save, which the war priest failed twice across like 5 or 6 bone shakers. No, 4 bone shakers, because there was a bless and a hold person that also were attempted. So he failed 2 out of 4 saves. He got moved 5 feet forward. So when he got moved from here to here, that put him in line of sight for a couple more bone shaker ready action spells to go off, and he got moved into here. And by this point, he's at like 11 hit points, and the combat's just started, and I was like, no, there are better things to do than kill him here. So first of all, I had the 1 cultist do Bless just to buff all the allies, because there's 6 cultists in this room. The players are gonna have trouble getting in here one at a time with the narrow hallway. They're gonna want their buffs. It's gonna be a significant advantage, because they know there's more people behind them. They can see them, but barely. Not enough to cast spells on them, but they can hear them. They know there's more behind them. They heard them talking about who should go in the room first. So the other one, the last cultist, decides, hey, let's do a hold person. That way we can hold this guy hostage and negotiate for being able to escape without combat. Thing is, he succeeded on a save against Hold Person because it's not a necromancy spell, so it's a much lower DC, and it's only like a first or second level spell. So I think it was like DC 15 or something, so you didn't have to roll very high. And the War Priest has a higher will save. Yeah, so this would be like DC 16. Yeah, because it's a second level spell. They have +4 wisdom, and it's a base DC of 10 plus spell level plus wisdom mod. So DC 16, the War Priest, of course, has a +11 will save, so he only needs to roll like a 5. I think he rolled like a 12 or something. He succeeded by quite a bit. And so the cultist plan failed. Of course, he still had to be worried about opportunity attacks because all the cultists are wielding +1 morning stars. So, you know, 1 or 2 hits from opportunity attack is going to actually possibly knock him unconscious. So if I go over to the walls section, you can see he decided to use his burrow speed to go into the wall and leave like an inch of wall left to avoid opportunity attacks. And he ended up here, which allowed him to start his breath weapon, which is a 15-foot cone from this corner of the square, which was able to hit these 3 squares all the way out, which hit all 4 of the cultists in this corner with the breath weapon. And I think he ended up doing that 2 turns in a row, and then like 5-foot burrowing back into this corner to reduce line of effect and get out of melee range. Well, he has a reach weapon, so they're still within melee range of him. At least this one, the one that was here, is, but the others are not. They cannot opportunity attack him if he tries to move further, or if he tries to move further in, you know, all that. And by this point, the monk had shown up over here because this is like round 2 or 3 combat, and he was starting to go around. The thing is, the last guy who was alive over in this corner, standing in the space where this chair was, I imagine it was kicked to the side. He does a fog cloud, or not fog cloud, the lower level version, obscuring mist. So they can't really see him, but I believe the gunslinger went in and just hugged the wall until he got, because, you know, the guy was there, and he used his move action for something else. I don't remember what, but he just hugged the wall, got in melee, and just started shooting him in melee. So they won the combat. They killed 5 of them, captured another one. So far they have a low-level cultist captured who is significantly over the non-lethal amount required, and the cult leader, who is, if they heal 1 point non-lethal, they wake up. And I don't think they've bound them with anything. I don't think they brought rope or a chain to bind them with. And even if they did, let's see, what's the cult leader's strength here? 9. Yeah, so they're not breaking out. They're not breaking out rope. Yeah, no, and all their blades have been taken away, and by blades I of course mean arrows. So yeah, if they tied her up, then it's gonna be no trouble. But I don't think they did. I think they're just relying on her staying unconscious. Anyways, there is an illusionary wall here, and something fun about illusionary walls is they do not age or weather. They do not erode the way regular stone does, and this place is like 6,000 plus years old. Yeah, it's one of the oldest non-dwarven structures left in the world. So this illusionary wall is, you know, pristine as the day the place was dug out and polished, and all the walls, you know, there's like 1/4-inch stalagmites hanging from the ceiling because of how old the place is. And then this wall, this one segment of wall, is just fine. So it's only like a DC 12 perception check. You know, hey, they're setting up with this wall. It hasn't aged a day in the past 6,000 years. So one of the players just immediately walks through it, like, yeah, it's an illusionary wall. And they found 5 rubies, which I believe we should be low enough down that yeah, appraise checks, 14 and a nat 1 with +2. And the way we're doing skill checks is a nat 1 gives a -10, and nat 20 gives a +10 to the skill check. So that's a -7. So, and the base DC for appraise is 20. So they one of them thinks they're ready to retire. The other one thinks that they're just some red rocks. The rubies in reality are worth 100 gold pieces each. They also found a catch level 6 scroll of displacement. I don't know if they're gonna use it or sell it. But they don't have a wizard in the party. You know, their only proper spellcaster is a war priest, and they also have an alchemist. So displacement would probably be fairly useful. Yeah, and then next session, I assume they're gonna clear out the non-barricaded sections first. So they're gonna go over here. They're gonna be able to see the cultists from the entrance hallway. I imagine they're gonna go up there first. And the thing is, these cultists, their ritual is not summoning. They are making a scroll of Flame Strike. So, you know, the players, even if they don't identify the spell that the ritual is mimicking, they're going to see, hey, there's a piece of scroll, like quality parchment here with a quill that's just writing on its own while these guys are doing the ritual. You know, they're going to be able to figure out, oh, they're using a ritual to make a high level scroll. So they might let the cultists finish the ritual before, you know, while negotiating surrender with them. Because they can't communicate, you know, freely while doing the ritual. They have to do some verbal components. But, you know, one of them, like, they can do like half of a conversation at a time. Like, you know, half as much talking as you could normally do on a turn with a free action. So, you know, maybe. Yeah, I believe the war priest did heal a bit, not to full, but they are up to about half, a little bit more, or not half. They're a bit over 2/3 their maximum hit points, so he's doing fine. The war priest did pick a god. The monk does have a holy symbol but hasn't picked a god yet because we were kind of rushing before session. The war priest has picked the occult dragon, which is one of the elder gods. In terms of dragon, in my world, dragons are not mortals or outsiders. They're a completely another category. No one's really sure what happens to their souls when they die. They can be turned into undead like mortals can, but they don't get like reaped like mortal souls do. So, you know, even most of the dragons aren't really sure what goes on. The elder god dragons certainly know what happens, but you don't. If you were, you know, the information is not in a library in the material plane, so you don't, as viewers, you don't get to know. Because I assume you have the same access to knowledge as a civilian in my world. If you want to change that, then play in my game. But yeah, the occult dragon, let's see here. The god of imperial dragons, the occult tradition of magic, which in Pathfinder there are 4 traditions of magic. There is arcane, divine, primal, and occult. Mechanically, there's still only 2. It's just arcane and divine. You know, arcane has to deal with arcane spell failure from armor and encumbrance. Divine doesn't and is, you know, more powerful in every way. And like, for example, druids are divine casters mechanically, but in lore they are primal. Sorcerers, depending on their bloodline, can fit under any of the 4, but mechanically they always count as arcane. Anyways, the occult dragon is also the god of purgatory and the psychopomps, which are a type of outsider that reside in and over purgatory, and the god of forbidden knowledge. So it should be fun if he decides to kind of roleplay being a priest of this god, that he might end up going after some forbidden knowledge if I dangle it in front of him. Anyways, that pretty much covers what they did during the session, my plans for the immediate future of the campaign, and what I expect them to do during tomorrow's session. So I'll see you guys next week.